And second of all, I would say that even though you're supposed to be courteous and respectful of your mentors, I would say that you should never give up the habit of asking questions. Ask questions all the time, even questions that seem silly and stupid. There are no such questions in anybody's laboratory or scientific environment. There are no stupid questions. If you're faced with a machine you have not seen before, and you've got what things like, seems like an on-off switch or an on-off button and a couple of other dials on it, ask what every one of those buttons and dials do. You don't want to start fooling around with machines. First of all, you don't want to damage machines, but that's beside the point. You don't want to sit there fooling around with machines without any knowledge of how it's going to work. So ask questions. And ask questions also about the nature of the work you're doing. It's important never to give up the habit of asking questions, and that goes for whatever you do for years to come. Think carefully about what you're doing. If you don't understand something, try and understand it. If you can't do that on your own, ask somebody who you think knows the answer. And if you happen to work with somebody who feels that the questions you ask are ridiculous, either you go and work, you ask somebody else, or you point out to that question, to that person, the questions are not ridiculous. You don't know how the thing works. How does it work? So questions are very important. Now, the last thing that I should mention, not the last thing, but one thing I should mention now is perseverance. Okay, I said work hard, but you just can't work hard limitlessly without coming up with without any answers. You must try and reach answers of one kind or another, and you have to exert perseverance. There's nothing like sticking to it and keeping in mind what the question is you're supposed to answer and working hard at it until you reach an answer. Now, with respect to, let's say, differences in your environment, I can try and imagine essentially what kind of environments you're in right now when I compare it to my own. I was a big hockey fan when I was your age, but everybody in Canada is, so that's nothing exceptional for Canada. I was also a baseball fan. It turns out that Montreal, when I was growing up, had the #1 farm team of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Okay, Brooklyn Dodgers, which became the LA Dodgers, but Brooklyn Dodgers are much, much more important. And so whenever I could, I convinced one of my uncles or some friends that we ought to go to a baseball game. That wasn't very often, but frequently it was. Now, as it turns out, I'm going to take my son to one of the Mets games in a couple of weeks. These interests don't die. Whatever your interests are outside of work, cultivate them and enjoy them for whatever they are, whether it be music or men or women or whatever else you're interested in, sports. Never give that up. It's always a great thing to relieve what you're doing by engaging in these other activities. So that too is extremely important. Finally, I would say that there are two other things I want to mention. One is with respect to grades on your exams, etc. Grades are important, and in some ways they're important in enabling you to pass one stage and continue on to the next particular stage. But grades aren't everything, believe me. It's more important to understand the subject you're studying rather than to get a 98 or 99% on whatever exam you're talking about. So keep that in mind. Just keep it in mind as a reference point. Yes, there are grades. You have to do okay in your exams, but it's much more important to understand the subject. Lastly, I would say briefly, in terms of things that you should be interested in, and that's your family. I don't think there's anything that's more important in terms of your future now and for the next several years than support from your family and knowledge from your family that what you're doing takes a lot of time, it takes your effort, but it's certainly worth that effort. And so I would feel that you should engage your family in all kinds of activities and try to tell them about what you're doing. And as it happens in my case, nobody in my family had gone to universities before myself and my brother, and very few had finished high school. But that's the way it was. So families are important. Work is very hard. Perseverance is important. And lastly, I would say, enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Everyone, welcome here. We have such a distinguished crowd here, and we are honored. We are honored by Dr. Altman, who addressed all of you students. And it's a proud moment for all of us. It's 10 years ago that I founded the organization, and it is on you that you're going to carry on this forward. You also heard from Shabine earlier, one of my first, in my third year of the program, she was the first student. So she's now in Columbia doing nursing. She graduated from Swarthmore University. Then she came and worked at the back end for us for a couple of years, helping all of you wonderful students. Now she's gone back to Columbia to do nursing. And hopefully when we build a hospital, then many of you will come and help out other people. You will become a force in yourself. We have students, also my first few students are doctors and engineers already. One of them, Paolo Lizano, I don't know how many of you know, he's getting married later this month. So he already got his MD, he's getting his PhD, and we have several students. All of you students know that 20% of all of you get into wonderful schools, 20% into Ivy League schools. If you work hard, you get it. We will provide every opportunity that there is. We've been able to help you in the past several years now with resources. You've been getting wonderful stipends, which was a way to earn money for your families. Unfortunately, last year and this year it has become increasingly difficult. And hopefully we have help from every source possible to make that possible for all of us and all of you to take this to another level. We have wonderful people. I see Ms. McCarr, Ms. Farrenholz in the crowd, and also Congressman Rangel, and a whole host of people who are there to support you. So as long as you have your dream right and you work hard, you are placed with some of the top engineers and scientists in the country. When I started the program 10 years ago, I started with 3 students in my lab, and over the course of several years it has grown to 300 students in New York City, but also 100 students elsewhere, mostly in Native American reservations in Arizona, in Detroit, in New Orleans, in other places in the country, but also expanding into other shores, to Kenya, to Tanzania, to Ghana, to Mexico. So wherever there is a need. This year, again, it has been extremely difficult because of the situation. And there, the money goes further, so they don't make that kind of money. But here, all students used to get $1,500. And in most cases, that's the only resource, summer job that they had. And especially, it makes it very important for these young students and young minds to earn money as well as get an education, because you deserve it. And you deserve it not only for yourself, but your families and your community members, and then you have to start giving back. You don't have to start giving back when you are 50 years old or 60 years old. You can start giving back as later when you are still as an undergraduate student or even a graduate student.